One. Let me see if I can find my let's see. Here we go. Some chants for everybody. Okay. Don't know why it still won't let me go full screen. But here we go. 온도제 창첸 일어나로당 말바밀라 조제감보바 두선세자 응행가라바 지지중계 흥규바세남담 리탁사수 발렌주바소 잡란작야 제라나예베 냐메 조금 다고가귤람 소와뎁소 가귤라마남 유바즈노 남다징일로 젠로공기 강바선바진 제노쿨라 작제메바담 세디도자 주베곤젤람 예쿠셴바 메바징길로 모구공기 고손바심 메낙테고 제베라마라 연두 소와 데베곤젤라 조민모구 개와징일로 예매공기 오지선바심 강샤독배 노소마데 마주데가 족배건젤라 곤잘로다 흔라와징일로 남도노 조구손바심 지양마인 지양자와라 마가로바 자웨곤젤라 고대열매 도바 Rame Chuki Pala Lonju Jing Sadan Langi Yonden Razo Ne Dorje Changi Gopanyo Dojo Dorje Changi Gopanyo Dojo. Great Vajradhara, Tilo, Naro, Marpa, Mila, Lord of the Dharma Gampopa, knower of the 3 times omniscient Karmapa, holders of the 4 great and 8 sublineages, Trikung, Taglung, Salpa, glorious Trukpa, and so on, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, unequaled protectors of beings at Dagpo Kagyu. I supplicate you, O Kagyu Gurus, bless me to hold your lineage and follow your example. Revulsion is taught to be the foot of meditation. Grant your blessings to this meditator, that this meditator does not cling to food or wealth and cuts all ties to this life. And bless me to be unattached to honor and gain. Devotion is taught to be the head of meditation. The Guru opens the gate to the treasury of oral instructions, to the meditator who continually supplicates him. Grant your blessings that uncontrived devotion arises. Awareness is taught to be the body of meditation. Whatever arises is fresh, the essence of realization, to this meditator who rests simply without altering it. Grant your blessing that my meditation is free of conceptuality. The essence of all thoughts is taught to be Dharmakaya. Nothing whatever, but everything arises from it, appearing for this meditator as an unceasing play. Grant your blessing so that I realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. Through all my births, may I not be separated from the perfect Guru and enjoy the splendor of Dharma. May I perfect the qualities of the paths and bhumis, and may I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara. O Sangye Chudang Soki Chonala Changchu Bardu Dagni Kya Suchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sunanki Drula Penche Sangye Druba Sangye Chudang Suki Chognala Janju Bardu Dani Kyab Suchi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunanki Drula Penche Sangye Drupa Shuk Sangye Chudang Suki Chonala Changchu Bardu Dagni Kyab Suchi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunanki Drula Penche Sangye Drupa Shuk. Until I reach enlightenment, may I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the noble Sangha. Through the merit of accomplishing the 6 perfections, may I achieve awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. O Palden Savi Lama Rinpoche Dagi Chiwo Pere Denshi La Padren Chimpo Gongni Chizun De Kuzun Tigi Nuro Sado So Lama Rinpoche La Soba De Dasino To Vajinino Gomigeno Givajinino Tomenana Gavajinino Ranzingime To Vajinino Tuba Ranzi Vajinino Nazi Jaka Toba Shinji Lo Dusun Saniguru Rinpoche No Dudava Kundi Jibasa Pachi Kunsa Zawa Saba Shina Sani Jiba Jiba Sambalangi Jiba Shinji Lo Lama Rinpoche Lama Jinpa Okay. Hi, everybody. You can hear me okay? So great. I think the last session, I think it took us 2 sessions to get through versus human birth, but tonight we'll begin on death and impermanence. I think it'll be things will move a little faster, at least kind of going with the text I'm looking at. Actually, to tie it into something we were just chanting, it talks about revulsion is the foot of meditation. So I was reading a Nundro commentary. It was actually kind of saying that the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma that we're doing give rise to, like, you could say, like the spirit, the attitude of renunciation, as opposed to, I think, there's outer renunciation, which is important. People like different things that individuals know to themselves. They say, I'm not going to do this, like maybe a person decides not to drink anymore, or they don't want to eat animals, or they don't want to like have I don't know, like too many relationships or these kind of things. Like but the attitude of renunciation is a little different than just the outer thing. I mean, the outer thing is important to us, for us to know. Uh-oh. It says I'm echoing, but does anyone else hear an echo? Okay. Um, but how to say this? The an outer renunciation is important. I mean, I'm calling it outer to just draw a distinction between one is kind of a view and an attitude, and one might be an observance. So the observances are important because it kind of gives us structure between ourselves and the world around us. What we know works for us, what we know is virtuous, what we know kind of, we'll talk about karma later. But the idea of an attitude of renunciation, you know, to kind of see clearly what to take up and what not to, and how to see the world, as opposed to just necessarily maybe rules of functioning, like kind of something you can always have with your heart and mind, is what I mean more by like this. Maybe you could say a view. So yeah, death and impermanence. The second of the 4 thoughts is the thought of death in particular and impermanence in general. So sometimes you see people just call this impermanence, but Rinpoche is saying death and impermanence. And he quotes the text. It says, secondly, the environment and its contents. Sometimes it's translated the environment and its inhabitants, like people, are all impermanent. Not only are you impermanent, everything in the inanimate world and the environment and the animate world of beings is equally impermanent. So you could say the beings and the environment of the world, all the inhabitants, us individuals, as well as the entire world that sustains us, cares for us. You could say that we live off of and live within. Until now, you have taken all of this to be permanent, our lives and our dependency on this world. Through doing this, you have caused an endless amount and variety of suffering throughout the ocean of existence of samsara. All the things you take to be solid and permanent, even the earth, stones, mountain, and so on, are all impermanent. So if we take that for just a second, like we want to have our lives and the things that we consider to be ours in our life, we want them to last. We want to kind of care for them, take care of them, and we go through all this effort. And what Rinpoche is saying here, and in this amount of variety of suffering, so there's several things. Like we don't want to lose. There's a type of suffering called the suffering of change, and you don't want to lose what you have. So there's just the idea of considering losing what we have could cause us anxiety, an unsettled feeling, that kind of thing, fear. But also, if something were to jeopardize or threaten what we want to maintain in this life, we might take up wrong actions to protect it. You know, um, maybe fighting in these kind of things, but also more likely, much of the time would be kind of like a soft wrong deeds, like manipulation, and you could say kind of bolstering where we're at unrealistically. In other words, well, I'd even go further. Like I'd say, like, to protect something, we'll do something else that we like, because we think something's impermanent. We'll do something to protect that thing by using something else that we hope we can maintain, and something else that we can hope we can maintain. So we kind of create a whole kind of interconnected uh, kind of wishing well, like kind of a lot of, like, we're hoping all these things somehow sustain themselves indefinitely, when actually each and all of them are not going to last. And so of course it's going to all kind of fall apart. And so Rinpoche does say, the environment, again, like the earth, stones, mountains, and so on, are impermanent. Things that don't seem impermanent. And we're about to talk into that. For example, Earth, we look at it and say, well, it seems like it did yesterday and the year before. Stones and mountains, that kind of thing. Rinpoche says these things are impermanent in two ways. They're impermanent in the core sense of eventually ceasing to exist. So yes, like, you build a house and you come back, 100 years, the house could be kind of a collapsing, kind of structure and shack kind of thing. That would be coarse, or if you were like blow something up, disassemble something, things actually actively falling apart. Maybe that's a good way to think of it. They cease to exist on the terms we think of them as existing. Like if you have a basketball, like, and you puncture the basketball, like the conditions of it aren't the same. Like the skin of the basketball, the structure might still be mostly there. You could look at it and say, I'm pretty sure that's a deflated basketball, but the function of it, like being able to have air, pressure, push something together. So it's like once something falls apart, a lot of times there's the idea of repair is one thing, but a repaired something is not exactly the initial thing we started with. And then from then on, it just continues, whatever we're dealing with, kind of to become insufficient and incomplete to how we knew it. So he's talking about the coarse impermanence, like something's there one minute and it's not the next. But there's also subtle impermanence, which is the idea that basically something ceases to exist from moment to moment. That's a little harder to see. It's not as apparent. And it's actually, it's interesting, because if you were to say, oh man, like where I used to hang out with my friends, and maybe there's a restaurant that you went to and that restaurant's not there anymore, or it's a different restaurant. It's it used to be a Chinese restaurant and now it's a Mexican restaurant or something like that, or just a franchise or something like that. So it's changed, or maybe they tore it down. Maybe it's a parking lot. It doesn't exist anymore. But subtle impermanence is the kind of thing where we're like, well, the restaurant was there yesterday, it'll be there tomorrow, and we just keep telling ourselves this. So we're reifying it. But actually, from moment to moment, like if you say, what is something? This gets into like the philosophy a little bit of emptiness, but the idea that basically everything arises from causes and conditions. And if you change any of the conditions, then what's arising is therefore slightly different. I tend to think that one of the best examples of this would be like cooking. Like if you have a recipe you like and you slightly alter the recipe, or maybe you don't have quite enough of one ingredient, it might taste functionally the same, but like you would know, oh, like I just needed a little more garlic, or I had the garlic but not enough salt or something like that. And so the effect of what's happening is a little bit different. And while when you talk about a recipe, it's something kind of once made, you make the food and you eat it or whatever you do, throw it away or give it to someone. But the analogy there is that everything that goes into the recipe creates the end you could say the result, the cause and the conditions create the effect. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with karma, but the idea is that whatever appears to us has that at play. There's so many factors feeding into everything that appears. So even while it might not be the impermanence to where something is there 1 minute and it's not the next, you pop a balloon, gone. That's probably better than the basketball. But subtle impermanence means that basically from one moment to the next, everything is subtly changing. And if we tune into that, then we're seeing it more clearly. But the benefit of that would be is that instead of telling ourselves from moment to moment something is there and it's reliable, then we know from moment to moment that it's variable and that it will eventually probably definitely change in the greater sense. But moment to moment, we realize its fragility, or that it's the result of a lot of interdependence. That's a bigger subject, a little bit going into emptiness and philosophy, but Rinpoche brings it up slightly. And he says, here we are primarily concerned with the core sense of impermanence, things that are there one moment and not the next. and that everything ceases to be what they appear to be. You can observe this directly by looking at the changes of the seasons, for example. Summer turns into fall, which turns into winter, which turns into spring, and so on. You can draw inference from the rising and setting of the sun, from the changing of the times of day, from morning to afternoon, and so on. In short, the entire environment, the entire inanimate world is impermanent. Beings, the animate world, sentient beings, are equally impermanent. Even if you should succeed in living 100 years, it is unlikely there would be more than 2 or 3 people alive who were alive when you were born that you would know. I mean, he's putting it in that way. If you live that long, everyone you ever knew when you were young would be dead. So life would be very different. Like if only a few people that were alive when you were a child were alive in 100 years, like they wouldn't have grown up with you. Like all your friends and lovers and like close associates, like people you lived life with, most of them would be gone. I mean, not just like most, like a few. Sometimes when people think most, like, oh, surely it's a few. But I mean, like all of them. You'd kind of be on your own. The world would be filled with people who are new to you. In short, once a being is born, it is impossible that they not die. And the quote from the Buddha, he says, the end of meeting is parting. The end of birth is death. They come together as a pair. Therefore, the text says, especially the life and vitality of beings is like a bubble in water. The two aspects of that which keep us alive biologically are what are called the life and vitality, which is what retains the physical life. So you've got life, like in other words, there's being alive and being dead, meaning like, when you take your final breath, you begin the process of dying in a manifest sense. But vitality is kind of your prana, your energy, your life force energy. And actually, the process from that point of view, the process of death begins much sooner. Even a person who lives for a long time, they're gradually losing life force energy and decaying. We all do as we get older. Actually, almost like when you're born, you kind of generate a certain life force energy until a certain point, and then it begins to decline for all of us if we live that long, But basically, once you're in your like somewhere between your teens and 20s, is when it starts to decline. You start to decline. We know that, but I mean that there's like tantric texts on physiology, like that some of a famous one written by the third Karmapa that talks about kind of how the body comes to be and how mind comes to the body and how the elements and the body form so that life is in the body and it's not just matter. but the process of kind of what happens during all the stages of gestation, he goes through that too. And it corresponds strangely with science. I mean, but anyways, vitality is a topic though, when you talk about impermanence. It's not just the idea of like, I'm alive and I'll die. I mean, that's the big one. But also, like our lives are impermanent. Like our jobs could be impermanent. Our physique, our health, our reputation, anything about us that we kind of is our interface with the world that we rely on to function is also completely here today and won't be at one point. And that can be a source of just like, again, the suffering of change. There can be a sense of loss around that, actually. A lot of times with Dharma, we talk about it matter of factually. But when we talk about it personally, and you could say like spiritually, I mean, we have all sorts of feelings, like around that. Ideas like loss, fear, perhaps unfulfilled aspirations. A lot of times in life we'll say to ourselves we're going to get around to something and we don't do it, which actually is the culminating point of Dharma. I mean, like we're trying to like, why does Dharma care about impermanence? And there'll be more said about that, but the idea of like we have to get around to practice. And so when we don't, whether it's practice or anything, we say, oh, I'll get around to calling someone, like calling a loved one, and then they pass away. It's like, well, we could have spent more time with them, and that will be with us. Like, so this idea of like loss as well as kind of missed opportunities, maybe. I said aspiration, but missed opportunities is probably fair. These are, let's see. Oh, life and vitality are extremely fragile. They can be destroyed at the slightest conditions, like a bubble, just like a bubble in water, which merely by being touched disappears entirely. The slightest change in our circumstances or conditions can destroy our lives. Never mind the numberless things that are obviously harmful, even the things such as medicine and so on, which we regard as causes and conditions for sustaining life, can kill us. I was saying last time, in Patrul Rinpoche's text on Words of My Perfect Teacher, there's a whole gigantic chapter on this. And he makes the point, he's like, even water that we use to drink, we can drown in water. We could choke on water. We need food to survive, but the food we eat could be what kills us. The things that sustain us, like medicine, maybe it's mixed poorly or incorrectly, or there's two containers that look the same and we take the wrong one. So something that's meant to sustain us, or maybe there's a combination. You mix the medicine with something you're not, or excuse me, you don't know you're supposed to not mix it with. It could have that effect. The text continues, the time of death is unknown. When I die, I will become a corpse. Even though you recognize that at some point you are going to die, you tend to assume that it's going to happen at some unspecified time in the future. Like we as Dharma people, we know that. We talk about like death, but we assume it won't be imminent, like it won't be tonight. We tell ourselves that kind of thing. We tell ourselves it won't be this year. So we kind of rationalize that it couldn't happen at any time. Maybe it won't happen ever, we tell ourselves. One more person in the chat. Here we go. Or in the session. Yeah. You might think you will live to be 80. You probably think you'll be around for a few more years yet. But there's absolutely no certainty of that. You could die at any moment. You could die today. You could die tomorrow. Many people die immediately after their birth. Many die as small children, adolescents, or adults. Few live to extreme old age. You could die at any moment. In short, the thought, I am going to die soon, is a very powerful way of correcting your priorities. Rinpoche doesn't say it here, but also in Patrul Rinpoche's text, He says basically one contemplation we can do is when you see someone else die, remind yourself like how unexpected and soon that was by any measure. And then also think that that could just as well have been me. Like, why am I alive and these other people are dead? Like, by what rationale? By what strange occurrence? Like, why? And particularly if you know someone the same age as you, like, a person, give or take a few weeks, few months, who dies, it's good to think like, wow, like I'm in okay health and they maybe were in even better health. Like, why did they die? Why did things kind of come together in such a way that they died and I'm not? I haven't. And particularly also like remind ourselves, like, because as Dharma practitioners, sometimes we think like, oh, I'm so fortunate. I've got blessings and I've got this good karma. But we also have the bad karma too that we make for ourselves, all the non-virtue that we make. Like, why? In other words, like, why do some people, you can see like, this common thing, someone say, why do bad things happen to good people? Like, why do good people die, without much cause or reason? We know as Buddhists, like, there's karma around that. But why are we still alive? You know, it's like, I mean, if we ask ourselves that question, we don't come up with great answers that don't just seem like it's just circumstantial. When you see all the opportunities for harm and destruction, and that it's so easy for people to sometimes die. Or that people have, you could even say many times, that it's almost like, again, I'm a little bit in the cycle, but it's almost circumstance alone that brought someone to that, as opposed to something that they planned on or did eminently. They just happened to be, things happened to come together in a way that that person's life ended. Everything you've done up to this point has basically been done to sustain this aggregate, this heap. Sometimes that word pumpo in Tibetan, the heap or aggregate of flesh and blood, to remain physically alive and comfortable. But when you die, you are going to leave your flesh and blood body behind. So when we die, our mind and body part ways. Mind, if you see a corpse, then you like poke a corpse, nothing happens to it. But if you poke a body when it's alive, something happens to it. So mind, there's no mind in that body at that point. It will be dead. It will be a corpse, and your mind will be saddled with negative karma that you have accumulated in order to sustain what you have lost. This karma will follow us, but the corpse will not. It will become an object of disgust and aversion to others. After 2 or 3 days, it will start to rot, and people will want to get rid of it quickly as possible. And the text says, at that time, the Dharma will be, only the Dharma will be a benefit. Therefore, I will accomplish it with diligence. The only thing that you will take with you is your karma when you die, which will follow us like a shadow, which it already follows us like a shadow, but it's the only thing that will follow us. The thing that will help you at that time will not be what you have done to protect or sustain your physical body, but only the practice of Dharma. For this reason, at this time in which your body and mind are still together, you have this excellent set of circumstances by which you can bring about the Buddhahood for yourself and all others. You must resolve to use the remainder of your life from now until you die entirely for the practice of Dharma. You must resolve that whatever happens, whether you become fatigued by practice, sick from practicing, that you will only continue to practice until the moment of your death. So, two other things, just very quickly. Rinpoche often said on this, the part where he says, the time of death is uncertain, and when I die, I will become a corpse. The uncertainty is something he's clarified. It's not uncertain. It is certain that we will die. the time of death is uncertain. And the part that needs to be kind of personally processed is that when I was saying earlier, we think, oh, surely it won't happen to me today. Surely it won't happen to my lover today. Surely it won't happen today. And that part is kind of this weird. I mean, I think a part of it's like hubris and arrogance of us in a way, but I actually don't mean that in the sense that sometimes arrogance is like this aggressive thing. It's more like we've been deceived. Like if we could see it clearly, we wouldn't feel that way. It's that kind of hubris. Like if we were like sober to it, like really, really, really thought about it for a second, we might say, gosh, I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow, so I should do some Dharma practice. I should do some meditation. I should make aspirations. And when I wake up tomorrow, if I wake up tomorrow, I should continue to do virtue and to work with my mind and work with my mind stream. Actually, the other thing I was going to tell you is that it's a funny story. For some reason, Lama Karma likes this a couple times, and like it's like the kind of story I've told a few times, and he like over the years, and he'll forget. And then if I tell it, it really makes him laugh. And a few other people have liked it too. But basically, when I had been a student of Khenpo Rinpoche for about I'm going to say 3 or 4 years at a certain point. And I waited to start my Nundro, which is a little different in our community. A lot of people kind of get motivated. Our community emphasizes it. But to me, I had a sense of that it's a big project. And I wanted to make certain that I wouldn't just start something and fiddle with it. I wanted to, if I did it, I was going to do it, and but I felt very early on that Rinpoche was my teacher. And the more I felt that he was my teacher, I'd go up to see him and read everything he wrote, tried to go to every teaching I could, that kind of thing. Very quickly, actually, the very first time I saw him, I asked if I could be a student. And so I'm sitting there, I'd go to KTD and see him and go to these teachings, and I'd go home and do my practice and do lots of prostrations and Nundro and things, and think about precious human birth and impermanence, and oh no, what if I don't finish this in time? I need to practice really hard, and I'd kind of keep myself going, and then I went up there for an interview, and I saw him because Rinpoche used to be very. I mean, when he was younger, he was a little more available. Like you could just sign up for an interview whenever he had a teaching. In the morning, like kind of between breakfast and the morning session, they'd have short interviews, and I took every opportunity, and but no, I went in, and there was a Tibetan translator at the time, one kind of my favorite translator around, a layperson named Choger, and he was a really kind Tibetan man. Like he was the kind of person, if you did an interview, you could say anything, and know that he wasn't gonna like gossip about you, or maybe if someone translating is like a monk or a nun, you feel like, I can't talk about too many of my screw ups because they're too blue or something like that, too off color, inappropriate. But with Choger, like I could do that. And so I had asked Rinpoche, and I just had a really good rapport with that combination, Rinpoche with that translator. And I asked Rinpoche, I said, I'm doing all this practice and all these prostrations, and my Nundro, and I want to, I want to get this done. I don't want to prolong it, but it's taking its time. It's not something you just do in a weekend kind of thing. It takes, for many people, years to finish. And I said, what do I do if, and before I finish this and can get, the pith instructions, like the Mahamudra pointing out from you, what happens if you die before I finish this? I think about this all the time. I want you to live a long life. And Rinpoche said something in Tibetan to the translator. And of course, I was super sincere saying this, probably ridiculously sincere. And the translator laughed and laughed and laughed and couldn't get it together. And Rinpoche, I mean, I think he was really baffled that Rinpoche gave this answer, but it like blew his mind, and me too. When I heard it, he goes, Rinpoche said, you might die before I do. Which, I mean, Rinpoche was 80 years old at the time, more or less, either that or approaching it. But the idea, like it's actually true. Like, you can't just say to yourself, like, there's dimensionality to this. Like, yes, I want the condition, like the lineage prayer saying, you want to be with your guru, in this life and the next, always. And to have the Dharma in your life always. But the idea is that, like, and so you pray for your teachers to have long life, but like, we have to think dimensionally too. Like, I might not be here. I might go before them. Like, that's a very, very real fact about impermanence. Like, everything again coming together right now is, causes and conditions and interdependence. But the factor that changes could be me, it could be you, it could be any of us, and it could be anything, but it will change, and they're always changing. But the problem is, we are always relating to the myriad of these things as not only permanent, but like co-permanent, like kind of interrelating in such a way that, oh yeah, they're all reinforcing each other. They're bound to last. And it's like, no, none of them actually are going to. So all of them won't. But I'll open it up for any questions or dialogue. It's a heavy one. It's quite direct maybe, but it's super significant, because the more we see it that way and see it clearly, actually what happens is not just a sense of renunciation, but a sense of freedom. But it's a different kind of freedom. We don't get the freedom of like a hedonism for me to do what I want with all the things in life. It's the kind of freedom that allows you to appreciate what there is. And we could be free from a little bit of that hubris. That sense that that I deserve these things to last forever, because they simply are here, and we can appreciate the good things in life, and also know that, like, a lot of the conditions that aren't always favorable are impermanent too. But yeah, it could sound heavy, but it's freeing for us to see that we don't have to chase these things around forever, because they're not going to pay us back. They're not going to be reliable in the end. We can respect the world we live in without expecting it to just do things for us indefinitely. I have a hand up. Marcia, let's see.
Hi.
I'm looking for you.
I'm here.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. I see you now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this is a hot topic and something I think about. And let me tell you just a little background in that. In November, I was dying. I had a terminal cancer and I got fixed. And I so far have been gifted some more time, who knows how long. So this was very much in my face. I've had other health conditions that never felt like this before. And I'm losing friends and family at least once a month. So death and impermanence is smack in my face. I'm also a nurse for 48 years. I've been working in death, which is a whole different thing than when it's smack in your face, and it's you. And it brought on a lot of anxiety and stress because I didn't feel ready. And not just spiritually, but in all the things you have to get together in life so that someone else isn't burdened, all of these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so when it comes back to spiritual practice, when you talk about what Rinpoche says, you need to dedicate your life, the rest of your life to this. Well, that's a monastic life. And I don't feel that's realistic for everybody, and not everybody's choice and or karma, however you want to put it. I love to be in the mountains. I love to be out hiking. I like to be with people and whatever served they
Yeah.
need, or just to enjoy my days. I bird. I mean, those fill me up besides my practice,
Hmm.
and so, and of course I was raised Roman Catholic, so the guilt comes in. I was raised to be guilty about not doing this or that. So that's two separate questions, really. There's the guilt, dealing with the guilt of, oh, I should be sitting 24/7 and practicing and learning all these different practices. But how do you, I mean, really, realistically, in our world, we're not monastics. And
Sure.
so what do we,
Yeah.
what should we be doing, or what's
Yeah.
acceptable, or
So
to
it's also
prepare?
interesting, like, I mean, if you were to take like the paradigm of a layperson, a monastic, and then like a serious yogi like Milarepa. I'm not talking about other, like if you look at Milarepa, that's someone who really did nothing but Dharma once he started for the rest of his life. Like absolutely nothing else. To the extent that's even more than like the monastics. And the example you were talking about. For lay people, I'm a lay person too. I'm not a monastic. I've lived in the 3-year retreat setting, and but I never took monastic vows. Um, and I have a wife and son. But what I would tell you is that for us lay people, the actually the way that we practice, it is good to do um formal practice some, like something like, if you're doing Nundro or doing a or Chinrezig, or a practice like that you and a teacher have set, or that you've come to make a point of like a daily practice, that kind of thing, or meditate. It's often very good. But it's also fair to say that the bodhisattva path, the inner path, is accessible for lay people. Meaning, um, we can look at our motivation and bring things to the path through practices like Tonglen. Like, in other words, like, and actually, I'm gonna bend it a little further, even still, and say, like, in our Mahamudra lineage, there's an emphasis on what's called like meditation and post meditation. And it comes up in Tonglen too, but the idea of like what you do on a cushion, and then when these same teachings arise in the mind when you're off the cushion. So for lay people, we don't have as much time, you could say, on a cushion, or let's just say busy people, right? Because if you're in a monastery, a lot of people think, oh, I'll be at a monastery, I'll practice. And then someone said, you know what? I think you'll be the cook. Or someone says, okay, for the next year, you have to do this weird chore. People get kind of beat up about that. The idea is that like some of our time is on the cushion, and a lot of our time is not on the cushion for just contemporary people in general. And so the idea should be that off the cushion, we need to bring Dharma to our mind. And so the teachings of bodhicitta and Tonglen, or teachings of compassion and contemplating emptiness, are totally suitable for us. And so we shouldn't feel like we can't practice this path. We absolutely can. There's a lot of lay people who've accomplished the path without a doubt. Many examples. It's not as common, but it's there. What's the primarily has to happen is our focus and dedication, like our focus on making sure we have some time on the cushion, and making sure that Dharma comes up in our minds when we're in post meditation, when we're off the cushion. Nature is an interesting thing, being out in nature. A lot of Dharma people thrive on it. I was actually just listening to a teaching not that long ago where a Dzogchen master was basically saying that they were talking about all these different things he wrote, hundreds of volumes of texts, and like he wrote a whole text on retreat and being out, and he was basically made a culminating statement that says, hey, if you want to practice Dzogchen or Mahamudra, you need to be out, away from things a little, like in a remote, quiet environment. So like moments of nature. Now, I mean, granted, this is a person speaking about retreat, but the takeaway that we can have is that being out in nature, like sometimes there's no rule that says you have to meditate in a shrine room, or even in a quiet place. You know, like we can go out to like a nice park or sit by a lakeside and just set our intention and meditate for a minute. And we don't have to sit in like, you know, a very like kind of, you know, super intense posture or wear all sorts of things. We can just, in fact, I don't, you know, if many people have this instruction, but in a lot of the Mahamudra instructions, they say, you know, the way to do this is short sessions again and again. And Milarepa said that in our tradition. And it is a fair thing to say that you could just go out in that kind of environment, you know, walk, hike, see animals, and then when you kind of are hiking and you kind of it's time to catch your breath, you can just go and look at your mind for a moment. It doesn't have to be the longest meditation, but do you see what I mean? That you can drop into post meditation instructions at any time. It's important for us to do, but I will tell you that like the world when we're out in it wants us to go into our habits and pull us away. So still having some time to have formal structured practice will also help the post meditation time. And the other thing I was going to say that I thought was a cool point you made was when you had said that you're a nurse and you've been around probably illness and death quite a bit, like up front and close. And seeing it yourself is very different. There's a classic Dharma analogy that like they basically say, like, for example, it's a little bit more modern. I say classic, but it's not ancient. Of if you were to go into a store and you're let's say it's a like a watch store, and a man drops his watch on the floor, boom, you know, nice watch hits the floor. You might say, oh, it's bad. But if your watch hits the floor, you feel it. Like you say, oh, like damn, like that's my expensive watch, or that was a gift from grandpa or something, you know, like whatever our story is around the watch. So what's the difference? Really? Like the watch is, you know, in both stories, the watch functionally is the same kind of watch. I mean, two hands, you know, 12 things on a dial and, you know, wristband on it or something. But it's like, what makes it different is it's mine, you know, and it's happening to me. And so, not that you've done anything wrong, and that's just our condition. That's our situation. And when we talk about the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva ideal, there's a lot of talk about compassion and exchanging self for other. But if you were to culminate it into one point, is we have a lot of self-cherishing naturally. It's not a sin. It's not wrong. It's a tendency. It's a strong tendency. And you could even make the point like I think sometimes when people say self-centered, it sounds purely pejorative, but I'll say it like matter of factually, like from our own point of view, each of us is the center of our experience. And so what ends up happening is like we forget that someone else is having an equal experience themselves. Like they are equally experiencing the whole world through their lens. And so what you said really reminds me that like it changes when it lands on us to even think about it. And I'm glad that you have this extra time, by the way. I meant to say that at the very top. Sorry. But that actually everyone else is also in the same position. But I would add one thing to you too, is that because you've had this, I guess you'd say like notification, or you know, because you're made aware of it, and like we could say like a medical sense, then like a lot of other people won't even get that kind of notice. Do you know what I mean? Like so I don't know. Those are just the thoughts that went through my head. I have nothing special,
until
but
you go through it, you know, just like
mm-hmm.
experiencing a loss of a loved one or something, you know, you can be
Yeah.
compassionate with somebody who lost somebody until you've had that. I lost you, my mother or my spouse or something. You can't relate to it. You know, it is on a different level. I think that's our human experience. But I will say that I've always felt very compassionate. But since this happened, everything that's happening to everybody, it's like I feel it in my cells on a totally different level now. It
That
just
sounds
has
good.
heightened everything. And so trying to maneuver this now, it's a new version of my senses for sure. So
Well, I hope hope you get as long as you can. And then,
yeah, it's a
but
crapshoot. We don't know what we got.
but I do encourage people, like I think that sometimes there are the archetypes of like layperson, monastic and yogin, and they're important within some frameworks for sure. I mean, not putting it down. There's a reason that's all like there. But I think the most important question for us to ask as individuals is like, especially when we're talking about things like impermanence, is like, what does this mean to me? And like, as a practitioner, what does practice look like for me? And I think that when you get around groups of Buddhists, or if you get around things that are kind of like even like the internet, like kind of does, for all its open-mindedness, it kind of has a lot of compression, like this is the right way, that's the wrong way, and everyone's yelling at each other about something. What's more important is that your practice. Like Buddha taught Dharma in a variety of methods for the range of sentient beings. They say 84,000 dharmas, but the fun, that's just putting a big, a seemingly infinite number on there. But the fact is, like Buddha taught, there is a path for every being, actually. Mm. Once they themselves begin to kind of relate or open up to it. But I'd say that I wouldn't when you hear a teaching like this, the point is to motivate and not to saturate. Like if this starts to sound like fear mongering, like in other words, to where you don't feel motivated to practice, that's taking it too far. So the emphasis of this is to just tell us. I mean, you could also reframe this entire thing as a positive. Like, I mean, instead of saying one day I'll die, so I should practice, we could say like, I like to practice. I like to be with my mind. I like to work with my mind, and I won't always be able to. So I'll do it. Like, I mean, that's really, it's not really, the logic is still there. But if a person feels too tense about it, or too, I think, not that you sounded tense, but if we feel that we can't align with a paradigm, it's not important to align with any paradigm but our own when it comes to Dharma, because ultimately we're working with our mind. You know what I mean? And like, and ostensibly we've found something that works in our mind with us where we're at right now, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be interested in Dharma. So the idea is to continue to nourish that rather than to, I mean, we can trust the framework of Dharma. When you hear a teaching and something like that, say, oh, that worked for the masters. And my teacher's telling me this. So gosh, surely it must be true. And be open-minded in that way. Absolutely. But in another sense, there's a part of us, our own consciousness, that said, I like Dharma. Or if we've done some teaching, we like some practice, we say, I've tried something and I like it. And that's what I want to, within ourselves, we would say, that's what I want to grow. That's what I want to, the word sangye, the gye is to expand in Buddha. The word Buddha is two syllables, sangye. To sort of expand the positive qualities that we have is part of what takes us to Buddhahood anyway. It's not, if it was as easy as just following rules, then like, I don't know, like, oh, this is probably not appropriate, but it's like, yeah, then like the Nazis would have became Buddhas. It's like, it's not necessarily like following rules is not like necessarily going to take us anywhere but within the rules. Or you could say what's presented, but we have to contemplate it and put it into our own sensibilities. Like what does my mind need? You know what I mean? And like, but Dharma should tell us a lot about our mind, but also give us ideas. And so that's what it's about, like finding it for yourself. Because this is just framework, and it's a trusted framework, but at the same time, like some practitioners practice in different ways. And one thing you can always do when you're out if you like animals and if you like nature, is you can just chant mantra. Like you don't have to
That's what I do. When
Yeah.
I'm hiking, it's the Om Mani Padme Hum. I prefer hiking alone so that I can just be with that as I go. Yeah, and I like what you said about I enjoy working with my mind, and this is my practice. And for me, it's been Chenrezig and Medicine Buddha, and I have always felt since I've been gifted those practices that's what I should be doing. And
there you go.
going through this, it brought me back because I wasn't practicing. So so there's all those things. So I appreciate your saying, the joy of using the practices to work with your mind and turning it into that framework instead of, I have to sit on my cushion because I'm going to go to, the wrong place if I don't,
No, let both of them refresh you. Like when you go to, like, say that you like, hey, I'm going hiking, I'll chant some mani. Then it might be a nice hike for the mani mantra. You know what I mean? It might make it a nicer hike, and hopefully it uplifts your mind and things like that. And then if you say, okay, like now there's a group session, or I'm at home and I wanted to practice Chenrezig at home, then like that'll you, when you sit down at home, it'll be a different experience. You'll be when you're out in the world chanting mantra, then it's like you're relating to whatever arises out in that space and bringing Dharma to it, and kind of exchanging with it. Whereas when you're in a session at home, you're reading off of a formal text, and it'll remind you, oh yeah, there's like there's this part of the practice and that part of the practice, and there's this thing is that color, and this hand is holding this thing. And so then it'll help you have you could say one is like very strengthening and encouraging and kind of developing, whereas one is out in the world and it's flowing. But yeah,
thanks. I don't want to
sure. Very good discussion though.
Thank you.
Did we end at 10:30? Or have I gone over? I have. Goodness. I'm looking at Wendy, but I don't have everyone on my screen. I just have a few people. So
that was a really good question. Thank you for that.
Was that Sue? No. Who just said that?
Oh, that was Lisa. SoCal KTC, Lisa. Oh,
okay. Yeah. Oh, I see you now. Yeah, cool.
I like that. Yeah, that was good. And the answer is exactly what I needed.
Thanks, Lisa.
Cool. I can stay for a few minutes if there's any other questions too. I do know it's time, so if anyone needs to go, that's okay too. I got a little lengthy there, but it was a good question.
Very good.
No, yeah. Well, I did want to say hi to Bruce. I haven't seen you in a minute. We used to see each other with a little more regularity. So hi to Bruce. And then also Sue again. It's really nice seeing you again. But okay. Well, let me see if I can find our chants again. And we'll go further. But again, the idea here isn't to beat ourselves up on like some standards that we're not meeting, as much as it is to, examine really, I think, what's going on for ourselves, like examining like our minds and our habits. And obviously the ones that we think make sense do. But the idea with Dharma again, like is it's this idea of motivation is very key when it's Mahayana, because we're doing more difficult work on our minds, and we're interacting with beings with compassion at a very like heightened level, and we're going against a lot of habitual tendencies in ourselves, like what is sensible in ourselves. So my only thing I'd say kind of going out of this is oh, you know what I was also going to say about impermanence and some other things like this. Sometimes when you first hear these things, they bowl you over, they blow your mind. And every now and then a good teacher can put a dose on you, and it really kind of like wakes you up and shatters, kind of our standard operating. But a lot of times if we read it every day, we might feel a little numb. Like, I know I'm supposed to think of things a certain way, and I can't really, it's not hitting me like it always does. And yet we're aware, like, oh man, these things won't last forever, and I just can't get motivated. A lot of talking this is theory. But if you just focus on life in the world, the theory won't matter because impermanence will come to you. Friends will die. We will get sick. Political change. I mean, whatever you want to shake a stick at, things will change. Our feelings, change from one minute to the next. These kind of things. So, like, I would say, like, you can kind of, rather than chase the waves will come to you a little. So understand that you don't have to seek impermanence. It's just the situation. Like, so again, like, contemplate these things as they're a part of life and understand them. Don't feel that like we've done something wrong when there's impermanence. Just see it when it's there, and when it's not there, try to recollect it some with some, like, with a sense of sobriety, a sense of clarity. And so I'll dedicate our merit so that we can do that. May we have that, a clear recollection of impermanence that helps us do good things and helps us work with our minds. O sonam de tamje zikpa ne tobne nebe pranam pamje ne chega na chi bala trupa ye sibe sole drowa sho jamba bawo jita gimba dang kundu zangbo de an de jin de da kingi jesu daglo ching Yewa dida tanje no. Well, good seeing you all again. And we only have one more session, but if we need to go another week, or if this cycle goes again, I can continue later. So don't worry. We've got lots to contemplate. So
Thank you, Lama.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your time and knowledge. Yes.
Thank
for
you.
sure, for sure.
Really
Thanks
appreciate it. Thank
for
you.
being here and listening and sharing.
Good night. We'll see you next
Good
month.
night.
Ciao.
Ciao.
You all.